the different stuff that makes up the IB and the AL. And we'll take you right through and make sure that you guys have everything you need to know about these two assessments. So basically you kind of get a sense of why we're here talking about these two. You know, thousands of programs around the world, more and more schools are doing IBDP, more and more schools are doing A-levels, and in Hong Kong it's more of the same. And in Hong Kong you kind of see where that's going, the disparity in schools. Of course there are a lot of IB schools in Hong Kong. These are the IBDP schools that do the final 2 years versus the A-level schools. And you can kind of see it's a lot fewer A-level schools. So the overall trend is definitely pushing to the IB. So we will spend some time. I know that Vanessa, right? Because you're kind of interested in choosing which one, you know, for you. So we will cover both, but just in Hong Kong, you can kind of see where the trend is going, and we'll sort of say why. This is going to kind of lead right into your university admissions, and like we talked about, the majors you're able to get into and all these different kinds of things. So when I say you're kind of choosing your destiny, it's just really difficult, right? You know, we talk about this with the other teachers all the time. When you're, you know, 16 years old, and you have to choose what you want to be when you grow up, it's really difficult at such a young age to decide what your destiny is going to be, what those programs you get into are at such a young age. And, you know, I always joke that I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and never mind, you know, if you're only 15, 16 years old, you know, choosing can be really difficult. So here's some of the stuff that we're going to go through today, guys. And I know I promised you guys some different timelines, so we're going to go over these timelines as far as like what you'll have to do for different subjects. We're going to look at some English humanities subjects. Vanessa, I'm not sure what kind of subjects you're really into, but we're going to go like basically the two sides, where it's kind of the English and the humanities side. So that includes, you know, the history, the economics, and then the language and stuff like that. And then also the math and science side. Especially the differences between the IB maths or A-level further maths and all that kind of stuff too. The timelines of, you know, what you need to prepare for, what some sample timelines look like for schools in Hong Kong, and then the advantages and disadvantages of both of these programs as you get into university admissions. And that's kind of the ultimate goal there. And so hopefully I think one of the things is knowing your options and knowing yourself. And so what we're going to talk about here, guys, is just kind of recommendations, and base all these recommendations on, you know, sort of general student populations, general concerns that a lot of people do have. But, you know, more than anything, make sure that you are kind of considering what is the best fit for you and for your ultimate goals. And we'll try to share some of those options that can help you make those choices. So here's kind of the background of the IBDP, and for you, Vanessa, this might be actually kind of where we start seeing some of the major differences here. So for example, the IB program, I think what we'll see across all the different subjects is no matter what subjects you choose, you actually have to get into several other kind of side program requirements that you must do in order to graduate. And these sort of side programs are kind of built to create a, you know, overall, you know, character development. And so what they try to do with all this is mix in those kind of traditional academic subjects, but then explore more kind of philosophical aspects and athletics, service, all these other types of things, in addition to all of that. Hi, thanks for coming. How are you? So we're going to look at why this is and what this looks like in your choices. Here's kind of the other thing, and I do want to keep this in mind, what we see here in comparison to the A-level mission statement. So the mission statement here is exactly what I was just saying. It's far more balanced. So whether you are doing language A, language B, you are doing two different languages. If it's Spanish, if it's Chinese, if it's English. They have Vietnamese, they have Estonian, they have everything. And it's really kind of pushing that international profile. and we're going to see why this is important from the university admissions perspective, what you guys look like as students to the universities, as an IB student versus as an A-level student. And all of this is kind of based on critical thinking skills and empathy, and empathic writing is a kind of a good example of kind of seeing from somebody else's eyes, putting yourself into somebody else's shoes, and really trying to understand from a critical perspective what people believe, how people think in different parts of the world. And you can already kind of get a hint of why that would be good for university admissions, right? Here, I think with the A-levels, one of the biggest things that I do want to highlight for you guys is that it's a lot of more independent work. Right, no matter what the subjects are, I mean, even if you are doing science labs, you do have to design these labs and actually carry out the data analysis and stuff like that, many times by yourself. The UK university experience is kind of similar to that, so if you are really thinking about going into the UK unis, you will have seminars and things like that, but for the most part what the A-levels try to do is mirror the fact that when you go to a UK university, it's going to be a lot more library time. You're going to be spending a lot more time in your library. I can tell you, I've struggled sometimes in the libraries in London to reserve rooms for myself if I need the room times. You know, people will fight over different room times in the library because you really are getting in there, getting the books you need, taking your notes. And so what the A-levels do is kind of prepare for you to enter that UK university experience with kind of a similar preparation there. And that's why you kind of have to focus on analyzing information, analyzing sources, compared to analyzing people and culture and perspectives and things like that too. So first major difference there, you'll kind of see right here, main part, all of this is more about preparation. It's all focused on getting into a university, preparing for university lifestyle, and then focusing on a very specific career choice that you've chosen. And I was kind of joking a minute ago that you have to decide what you want to be when you grow up. For the A-levels, that's much more true, because as we'll see in a minute, there are just fewer classes, fewer things that you need to take, right? Before you go to university. And so your career, your employment really depends on what A-levels you choose there. Oops. There you go. Either way, these are all good. A lot of people wonder which one's better for the US, which one's better for the UK, which one's better for HK. What if I want to go to Singapore? What if I want to go to Australia? We've done a lot of the Aussie uni apps recently too with people. So we'll get into a lot of the different uni processes as well. If you do have questions about when do I apply for the US, when do I apply for the UCAS, the UK, and how similar to that is that to the HK system or Singapore and US or anything else. So we'll get into those different admissions processes. But here's the basic breakdown. And if you do, I can send you these. I can send you the slides later too, if you like. So, if you guys do want to leave your email, if you want to catch up later, I can give you my email. We can give you the slides later too. But here's kind of like the major breakdown. You really need to choose 6 subjects, and 3 of those are going to be the higher levels. 3 of those are going to be the standard levels. And one of the big things that you'll realize when thinking about your IBs are which ones are going to be my higher levels. The higher levels you choose are the ones that the universities will really value the most. And then I know Sybil wants to talk a little bit about the different higher levels of math in particular, and I can share with you the different higher levels of English. But I kind of have these 2 here because everybody in Hong Kong takes those. Everybody takes an English, everybody takes a math. But as far as what else you take, you have to take a science, you have to take another language, a humanity, and then here's kind of the tricky one here. I'm not sure if you know about this part. You're meant to take an art, actually. There are 6 groups, and you're supposed to take one from every single group. But the reality is that the IB, this is the only group that you're allowed to drop. So for the most part in Hong Kong, you see a lot of students who actually don't take any art. And you know, I'm not sure how you guys feel about that if you're not studying music, if you're not studying a visual art or performance art. But there are other kinds of activities that you will do in the IB that kind of are artistic, they're very creative, so you're not completely stuck with your head in a book. And many students will actually replace that art class with a second science, actually. Another science if you want to go into medical school or if you want to study engineering or something like this. You can replace that with another subject and not have to do an art there. But I think in addition to that, the main program difference here is all of these other requirements that you have to do in order to graduate. The A-levels don't really have anything like this at all. You are going to, before you graduate, you're going to write a university level research paper. And this takes over a year to actually write, over a year to put together. A lot of the time I'm working with students on organizing and writing these things. If it's an English essay, if it's a chemistry essay, economics, or whatever it is, it's still an essay. So this is a lot of what I'm doing actually right now, these last couple of weeks. It's a lot of extended essay and theory of knowledge essays. The theory of knowledge essay is kind of very philosophical. It's kind of taken like a philosophy class. This is basically asking you to understand, how do you know anything? How do you know any knowledge in the world? What do you know about science? What do you know about math or these things? And then how do you know it? And then on top of everything else, you will have to do athletic activities, you will have to do service activities, and you will have to do some creative or artistic performance or creation activities. That can be music, that can be dance, that can be a lot of different things. But when we take a look at the A-levels, I think one of the things that I want you guys to remember is these are not choices, these are not options. You must do all these things, and we'll look at some timelines with you guys about when these things happen and how you have to figure out not only all 6 of your subjects, but also these 3 things too, and time everything so you don't go crazy. I know some, okay, so really quickly, there are major differences in math. I know you want to say something there too.
Yeah, like their new IB, they have the new math syllabus this year, right? Start from this year. And so now they kind of split math into 2 categories. One is AI, another is AA. So I think you can just easily Google it online. You have a lot of information. But for both AI and AA, they have SL and HL. So in total, we'll have 4 methods you can choose. So you just choose one of them will be fine. Just a kind reminder, do not choose the AI SL math. So it's kind of equivalent to currently the math studies. So it's kind of a very lowest level math. And you can only use that to apply for, the major in the college, which has nothing to do with math, kind of like lore, history, and stuff. But if you want to apply for even like business, you cannot use the AISL. Okay, so at least you have to choose AASL, AIHL, or AAHL. Okay, so for details, we can maybe later we give you more about the details. But this is like the new math looking at. But I'll kindly suggest if you want to do, for instance, like econ or like anything related to math and science, at least to choose a math HL. If you don't feel like you can do it, then in the first month you still got the chance to jump into the standard level, because actually the first month the content knowledge are the same. So most schools still give you the chance to drop it. But if you choose a math HL, it will give you kind of broader choices of the majors and colleges.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah, so there's essentially, that's a really good point. There's essentially 4 different maths you can choose from. But really think ahead of your major. And even though you wouldn't necessarily think business is a math study, you do need to actually, business is related to economics in a way, so be careful with your major there. And for English, I know we talked about that there, the other day, there are 2 different Englishes as well. When you are thinking about your English choice, if you do pick the IB, I generally recommend that everybody take literature. for their IB. It's very memorizable as far as the approaches, the techniques that you have to do, versus the English language and literature, where it's less memorizable. It's more advertisements, it's more comics, it's more websites and these sorts of things. Just trying to help people use English when they are on the internet or reading magazines or these sorts of things. So for English, whether you choose SL or HL, consider taking literature because it's a lot better for your university admissions. With the assessments, you're going to be up very late. You're going to have a lot of red eyes. I know, I can tell you right now, Hugo, a couple of my students who are in IB, they've already got a couple of gray hairs when they're, 16, 17 years old. And this in general is a very IB student look right there. IB students, they're special people, they try to have fun and hang out with friends and stuff like that, but it's a very focused student, they walk quickly down the sidewalks outside and there's always something to do. And you can kind of see, there's all these different assessments that you're going to have to go through. We will look at the A-levels as a comparison, but the A-levels are almost completely paper-based exams, where depending on your exam board, 100% of your grade is just on a paper exam, versus the IBDP, where you have a lot of spoken stuff, but you're also going out into the field, you're doing trips, you're doing service, you're doing a lot of different variety of styles. It's not just a multiple choice exam, or it's not just one final paper exam. So a lot of the, yeah, exactly, multiple choice, very, very rare. A lot of the different things that you're going to have to do is prepare using past papers for your subjects and really getting familiar with all the different styles of assessment. Looking at student copies, looking at past sample papers of successful students versus unsuccessful students. And what's really great about the IB is they release all of this information. And this is something that we do go through with students, is actually looking at past student samples and what did this student do for this kind of question? What did the student do for that kind of question? Why were they successful, or why did they fail? And actually break those things down a lot. And then I know with the sciences, there's a lot of different labs too for the IB. I don't know how you would describe those.
For each science and math, also, besides the paper accounts for like nearly 80% of your final score, but there's still 20%, and this 20% will be like their IA, internal assessment. So what is internal assessment? Internal assessment is just like a big, a long, a very intensive lab report. So you have to conduct the experiment, you have to collect the data by yourself, and then you need to write the lab report, you need to do the evaluation, analysis by yourself. And that's what accounts for 20% of your final score. So they're really busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest, you kind of hear the fact that the chemistry students, I know, if you think about doing chemistry, one of the things that you hear year in and year out with the chemistry students in their labs is they're really trying their best to make sure the labs work. And we try to help them with how to organize a lab and these sorts of things. But in the reality, year in and year out, you hear people faking their lab reports, faking their lab results, because there's so much stuff they need to think of, so many different things they need to do. And for the most part, they get away with it. The IB doesn't really mind too much because they know how difficult it is, but every single year, you can kind of joke about like, oh, are you doing an essay for chemistry? Are your lab results real? Yeah, really? Okay, all right. And the point being, it's a lot of different hard work, especially for those labs and those reports that you have to write. In general, here is a breakdown of the final 45 score that you get. 6 classes, 7 points each, you get a maximum of 42. But then those other 3 things do combine to give you the other 3 points. Just a quick heads up, this is 0 points, okay? So this is 0 points. You just have to do a relative number of hours. There's no prescribed number of hours for what creative activities or what services you need to do, but they prefer it's around 150 kind of total for all of these things. So there's no points for that, but it's kind of like pass-fail. And many students will forget to do some of their hours until they're almost graduated. And what happens is all of a sudden when you should be preparing for your exams, all of a sudden you have to do 10, 20 hours of something in a couple of weeks. And it really interrupts. So one of the things about this part, to make sure that you do graduate, you get your diploma, plan out what your activities are going to be over 2 years and do 1 hour a week or 2-3 hours a week versus doing 20 hours in 1 week where you're losing your mind. So here's the other thing that a lot of people wonder about. The extended essay and theory of knowledge, that's only 2 things. So how does that equal 3 points? The idea here is you have to get an A on one of them, and you can get an A or a B on the other to get 3 points. Okay, so let me say that one more time. You must get an A on one, and you have to get either another A or a B on the other to get all 3 points. So if you get 2 Bs means you're dropping down to 2 points. 2 Bs is 2 points, at least 1 A, you get all 3 points. For university admissions, just a quick question or a quick heads up on this part. A lot of people wonder for the universities, do they give me an offer based on these 3 points? Yes, basically they're going to assume that you're going to get a minimum of 2 points, so they'll give you an offer including those 2 points, okay? So if you get an offer saying from the university, okay, Emerson, you could come and study with us, but you need to get 38 points. That doesn't mean 38 points just for your subject, that means 38 points total. 38 points total. So when they give you an offer, they're already including the 3 points, and that's really helpful in choosing your university programs. So here's a sample kind of timeline, guys, and we'll go through another one for math and science as well. So here's kind of just an English and humanities timeline that you would have to think about as a student. And remember, this is only 2 subjects. This is only 2 subjects right here. You're going to have 6 different subjects, and this is what you'll have to kind of think about as far as your assessments and all the different things you need to do in the IB. So, these are the typical ones. This timeline is based off of Chinese International School timeline because they do English literature there. They kind of force the students to do English literature, and they have a really kind of clear timeline there. So as far as when your teacher would give the internal assessment, it might be a few weeks before or a few weeks after, but you can kind of see for English there's a lot of different assessments across the 2 years, and then you're really trying to have all those TOK, the extended essay, and the CAS activities somewhere in between. For history and other subjects, there's kind of fewer assessments there, but just looking at this, you can already get an idea of how crowded your schedule might be for each of these classes. In general, the major exams for almost all the subjects are at the end. These are the papers. They call them the papers. So this is when you'll sit down and do your papers, and that will be the last thing you do for IB. The end of year 2. You'll sit down and do your paper. So if you have more questions about English literature or any other subjects, we can look. But here's the math and science. So again, think about the TOK, the EE, but you can kind of see the breakdown here a little bit better.
Yeah, this one's better, it's clear, but actually can tell you the internal assessment, it looks like this, but it requires more time because you actually need to spend some time in the labs. Okay, so that means you need to spend some time in the labs, design it. You actually need to propose a topic first, and then your teacher has to approve it. Somehow your teacher may not approve your idea. Okay, so then your teacher finally approve your ideas, and then the school need to buy all the stuff, which can ensure you to do the experiment, and then you need to conduct the experiment. Okay, so this is kind of idea dates, because I know some schools they actually push the internal assessment in year 2. Which I don't think is a good choice because it would be very, very crowded. Consider the previous page. for in year 2 you really have a lot of deadlines. So I don't want you to actually squeeze the experiments in year 2. That would be like very overwhelmed. Yeah, you see that year 2 is very crowded.
Yeah.
So do not wait until year 2 to conduct the experiments to record data. That's kind of too late. The best time to do it is kind of in summer, between year 1 and year 2 in summer, and then you can just collect the data, do all the labs in the summer, and then in the beginning of year 2 you can already start to write your internal assessment. So after that everything will be like totally better, and then you just need to prepare for the papers. Yeah, in the May. Yeah. Yeah,
I think it's a really good point about the difference between year 1 and year 2. I think a lot of students are initially kind of scared, oh my god, now I'm doing IBDP. But you can kind of see most of the things are actually going into year 2. So with year 1, this is really the time where you might be taking the SAT, you might be preparing for the SAT or the ACT if you want to go into the US. You might be planning on what am I going to do in the summer for an internship or a summer program or these sorts of things. So year 1 of IB, they really try to take it slower with you guys and kind of introduce you into everything that's happening. So like Sybil said, please don't wait to push things into second year, because then you're really going to be stressed out. And then ask yourself, what can I be doing outside of class in first year? Am I going to uni in the UK? Okay, maybe I can do a summer program, get ready for a summer program at Cambridge or at King's College or somewhere else. Am I going to uni in the US? Is that my dream? I can do the SAT, I can prepare for the ACT in that first year, because you really don't want to be a student here in the beginning of year 2 and you're taking the SAT for the first time of your life. You might not get the best score, you might need to take it 2 times or 3 times. So year 1 is kind of your time when you can do those other SAT, ACT things and any other kind of preparation as well. Okay, so Vanessa, this is the A-levels. Okay, so the A-levels, the thing here is there's no real requirements for anything. You can kind of pick anything you want. And what's nice about that is there's tons of different subjects. We just have a couple of degrees on here because there are so many different dozens and dozens and dozens of A-level subjects. But you're not required to take anything. You're not really required to take any one subject. So what does that mean? Well, you're really focused. Like we said last time, it's all about preparation. So if you know what you want to do at university, if you are ready and you want to go into medicine, or if you want to go into science, you can pick 3 sciences or 3 science-related subjects. You don't need to do a language. You don't need to do any service or anything like this. And you really focus on those. You're allowed to take up to 5. What most people do is they'll take 4, and you're allowed to drop 1. You're allowed to drop 1. So in that case, you choose one that maybe you're not really sure about, and then give it a go. If you can do 4, if you can study all 4, fantastic. But if you're having trouble doing 4, then you just drop 1. Really exam-based. You're not going to be doing the athletics, you're not going to be doing the research paper, you're not going to be doing research or anything like that. Some subjects, especially like Sybil said, will have labs. Like if you are taking chemistry, there will be actual labs too. But for the most part, these are very high-stakes exams where you just need to kind of wait for those finals. So again, this is really independent. So what happens if you don't study and then you don't do so well on those exams? That's really your entire grade. There's not really anything kind of boosting up. So what we were talking about the IB the other day is with HL English, for example, this has got an extra assessment. That's good, because the more assessments you have, the less everything depends on just one final exam. So even though you are free to study whatever you want, you really have to make sure that you do prepare, because those final exams are everything they have about you. So you really want to do well in that sense.
Just to add on, this is actually the local A-levels. So that means if you do A-levels in UK, you're going to do like the fully linear ones. So they just changed it actually, just I think last year. So that means you only have one big exam for each subject at the end of year 2 years. So it's kind of like risky, just like Emerson mentioned. But if you actually study A-levels in Hong Kong or somewhere else besides UK, that means if we do international A-levels, things are better because you still have AS test and A2 test. So each test will account for 50% of your final score. So that means you will finish half of your subject test in year 1 at the end of year 1. Okay, so after year 1 learning, you receive a test, we call it AS test, and this score will account for 50% of your final one. And for the year 2, you will learn new topics, right? And based on these new topics, you will receive another test at the end of year 2, we call it A2 test. And that test will account for 50% for your final score as well. So it's like 50 plus 50 is much less risky.
Yeah. But again, you're still not doing any athletics, you're not doing any service, you're not doing any research papers, you're not doing anything at all except for those exams. Okay, so you're only doing exams, nothing else to boost it up, no other activities or anything else, just papers essentially, just the papers. So here we have, just as a quick example, is it always 12 practicals for chemistry?
I mean, not really. Actually, in A-level, just like Emerson mentioned, it's just exam scores. Actually, practicals is nothing. School will still arrange practicals, but everybody can, pass it. No one got to fail in practicals as long as you just be there, And then, that's the thing. But they have the papers test your knowledge relates to practicals. Yeah, because the A-level, for instance, for chemistry, have 3 papers. For paper 3, it's actually a practical-based paper. Okay, so your practical, you need to focus on actually, for instance, the steps, why I need to do this step, why I need to do that steps. And then this kind of skills and techniques may be raised, like this kind of question may be raised in your paper 3, a practical-based paper. Yeah.